Okay, thanks for pressing play there. Howard Husock has agreed to join us in a conversation with the Giving Review today, and we totally appreciate that. Howard is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, though speaking with us today from New York, where I think he's from, and he's got a great recent paper for AEI that we'll get to in a bit. But let's start, Howard, by having you tell us about similarities or differences between some of the other places you've worked and AEI. The other places you've worked would include the Manhattan Institute, the Philanthropy Roundtable, the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Is your career a natural progression to AEI, or how did this all happen?
Boy, I don't know. First of all, I have to correct you. I'm not originally from New York, from Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, even better. Okay.
So I'm a quasi Heartlander.
Okay.
Or Rust Belter or something like that.
Okay.
But I'm a journalist type. I started off as my first job was a general assignment reporter for the Middletown New York Times Herald Record in Middletown, New York. And, I've just followed my interests, and they led me to television. They led me to academia. They led me to think tanks. And throughout it all, I've just been, fortunate enough to follow my interests and be able to have the chance to write about them. And so I'm still doing it.
Great. When did you move to New York? Did you go to, I'm looking at the Rye football. How does a nice guy like you get from Cleveland to New York?
First to Ohio State, then to Boston University.
Yeah.
Long time in Boston, and then a break from Boston to go to the Manhattan Institute. Fortunate to serve as research vice president for 15 years. And that pulled my wife and me to New York. But even that might not have happened, except I got 3 boys living in the New York area, all married, and got 4 grandkids. So that's the real magnet.
Right. Okay. Tell me about the Manhattan Institute. For many years had something called the Civil Society Awards. To whom were they given? To whom or what, I guess I should say.
I feel very, very, you can still go to the Manhattan Institute website and see the almost 20 years of Civil Society Award winners that are listed, cited there. And, the program evolved in very interesting ways. It was at first about, recognizing excellent, innovative nonprofit programs that were doing new things that were not governmentally supported. So the so-called independent sector that Dick Cornell, in his book Reclaiming the American Dream, was one of the first ones to highlight. And then over the years, my own thinking evolved in this regard. I began to value less kind of the instrumental qualities of good programs and who they helped, although that's important, and to value at least as much, if not more, how leaders of interesting organizations, new organizations, drew their communities into their purpose. So one of my current favorite groups that didn't win the award, if we're lucky enough to revive the awards elsewhere, which maybe will happen, but I love a project called the Untermeyer Gardens in Yonkers, New York. And I'll tell you why this quintessentializes my view of civil society organizations. So this was a fantastic estate that was left as a park to the city of Yonkers, which is not a rich place, that had deteriorated over the decades to become a drug dealing, shooting gallery, overgrown, mansions in disrepair. And one architect named Stephen Burns said, this is going to be my project to reclaim this place. And he was able to raise a ton of money, put together a community board, not just from Yonkers, all sorts of interesting peoples, but a lot of people from Yonkers, including the mayor of Yonkers, but it remained, a nonprofit managed park. And today it's just a beautiful community resource that whole community is invested in. So it's a good park, and that's important. But the fact that the whole community came together and worked together to restore and maintain, I find that very moving.
Mhm. You did a paper for AEI that I think was entitled, "Is Civil Society a Luxury Good?" Is that park a luxury good? Is that park a luxury good? Because
No,
this guy was
it's
rich
the
for it.
opposite. It's the opposite. So the paper, which I'd love people to look up if they're interested, was looked at where are nonprofit organizations more um, more to be found, more concentrated. And I used post office data and census data, and I was able to find, with some interesting exceptions, that the wealthier a community is, the more organizations it has. It's not completely surprising. People have time, they have money, they do things, but the paucity of civil society organizations in lower income communities is a real concern, going back to Bob Putnam and Charles Murray's work. And so to restore a park in a low to middle income city like Yonkers is the opposite. It's creating a new locus of community togetherness in a way that is underrepresented in a lot of lower income places. So that's one of the reasons I like it so much.
The fact that it's underrepresented, might that be a commentary about, might that be a relevant observation regarding philanthropy? Shouldn't they look there more? Or what should conservative philanthropy, I guess is really what I mean to ask, do about this, if anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is conservative philanthropy at a kind of a titanic battle high level where it's engaged in the culture wars and it's Foundation A versus Foundation B through the universities? My interest lies more in like what the millions of small donors are doing. And I don't want them to be discouraged from finding and supporting and volunteering in their own local organizations. I think we get, look, I'm a active conservative person writing in conservative themes, and so I'm glad that the major conservative foundations exist, and I hope that they can influence the universities and all of that. But I think that's distinct from Americans of all walks being involved in their own communities in ways outside the government. And I view that as an end in itself that we need to celebrate and protect.
So as a pivot then to your most recent paper for AEI, are donor advised funds a way for the smaller donors to do what you would urge them to do? I guess give locally, or DAFs enable smaller donors to engage in philanthropy. Correct or incorrect?
Oh, I think very much correct. Donor advised funds in a way, and I've been cautioned against this, using this kind of terminology, but they're kind of tiny middle class foundations, and so you put in your higher earning years, you put aside funds to enjoy the tax deduction, no doubt, so that in your lower earning or retirement years, not everybody does it this way, but I think many people do, you can slowly and thoughtfully disperse that money. At the same time, it's accumulating value because, the smart people at Vanguard and Fidelity and Schwab and all the others are getting you maybe 5 or 6%. Wow. So I find, and I have a donor advised fund, I give away money and the balance doesn't go down. Wow. That's fantastic. I can give away more money. And, the report that I just did for AAI demonstrates that the advisors to donor advised funds, the middle and upper middle class people who in the hundreds of thousands have grown this type of account, give in many, many big mainstream ways. Doctors Without Borders is the #1 recipient. St. Jude's Hospital, some very, very well-known recipients, grantees get both disclosed and anonymous grants from donor-advised funds. But those are just among the top 10 in the data that was shared with me by Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, Silicon Valley Foundation, National Philanthropic Trust. I think that most people are also dispersing, all sorts of smaller gifts to localities as well, very likely, and it's convenient, so they do it.
Yeah. Why don't we finish up with part 1 there and keep going on DApps when we come back with part 2.